Now, this is a topic I could talk about for hours on end because magic mushrooms or shrooms or boomies or whatever you want to call them did play a pretty large role in my development as a human, at least over the last 7 years or so. So I would like to condense this though into a couple main parts. Now, quick disclaimer, I'm not gonna condone or discondone, the use of magic mushrooms for anything. I'm just gonna try to share my authentic experience and how it worked out for me. So I'm just gonna explain a little bit of my history with them, um, some like specific experiences, what ego death means, how it changed my view of reality and thoughts, or it opened things up a little bit, my perception of time, and my thoughts about language. And then at the end, I'm going to get into some of the negatives that I've experienced. So, oh gosh, where do I start? So, I did, my first time doing magic mushrooms was, I think I was like 17. I did like a gram. And that was cool. It was like, music was cool, everything, blah, blah, blah. And then, fast forward, I think I did them a couple times until I was like 19. I did a larger dose with a bunch of friends. And that was pretty interesting. And then over the years, I did them more and more, but not like, you can't get addicted to shrooms. It's just quite literally impossible. But I did them more and more until summer of 2022. I started actually growing them. So I just always had good shrooms available. So I did them a lot that summer. And then since then, I have done them only once. So I have a lot of experience with shrooms, with growing shrooms, with like helping people through their first experience with shrooms. And this is just, so the first thing you got to understand is whatever your current mindset is, whatever your current thoughts are, your beliefs, it will amplify that to a certain extent throughout the experience. So this is why people talk about set and setting being so important. You don't only want to be comfortable, but you also want to be content, right? You want to be comfortable in a good spot that, feel comfortable in. You have like fruits, some snacks. Fruits are great. And you definitely have water, that's for sure. But also you're with good people that you trust, that well. Or if you're doing it alone, you're just in a good spot, right? And you're in a good mindset of, nothing really drastic happened today. It was just a good thing. Maybe if you're outside in nature, there's like a little bit of that magic of the moment of like just the beauty surrounding you kind of uplifts your spirits, and therefore you'll have a much better experience, right? So that's very, very important. And that's what I've learned, because I've had good trips and I've had bad trips. And I've also had bad trips that I was able to change into good trips through changing my beliefs first, because that's just the point I got to with using them. So there was one experience in summer 2022 that was like my first ego death. Now, ego death, no one really knows what it means. Well, people do, but people talk about it weird or wrong, in my opinion. It's not like your ego dies. I still have one. It's just, for me, at least, it was an experience of not being so separate from everything else. It was a knowledge of the interconnectedness of everything, and just like experiencing that, like, whoa, not only is everything connected, like from the beginning of time to now to the future and throughout space, not only is everything connected, but it's also so much bigger than me, right? And that alone really helped with like my depression and my anxiety, because I had a lot of depression and anxiety growing up, and that alone was like, it just opened my mind to like, okay, me, little me in this moment who's having these terrible thoughts, like this isn't the end. Like, there's something bigger than all of this, right? So that was my experience with the ego death, and it's like it was kind of like an information overload. Like you cannot really you cannot explain that experience, and I tried to. I tried even like on that very same trip, I tried writing in my notes like the whole thing, like what I was experiencing, and it was just like it was constant. It was just constant information, because what I've realized since then is, yeah, psychedelics are like, whoa, they open your mind to these new possibilities, but it's also just, it's a glimpse of what truth is, like the fullness of truth. It's just a glimpse that, I don't know, Mother Earth was like, hey, these guys need a little help. And they're like, let's give them this glimpse so that they can go pursue it on their own, right? You don't want to rely on any of these substances or plants for any of that. It's what I've realized, and that's why I just totally am sober now. I don't do anything. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do shrooms anymore. I just meditate, and that's the other thing. So over that summer, where the same summer where I had that ego death, I was like microdosing a lot. And when you microdose, it like gives this little bit of clarity to reality. It's like this little bit of it's like clarity but also artfulness. Not quite sure how to explain it. It's like seeing the eyes, or is seeing through the eyes of a child again in a little bit. Like everything is just slightly more interesting and fascinating. And this year, at the beginning of 2023, I started meditating for an hour a day, and I did that straight for 4 months. And I got that very, very same effect just from meditating, where it's like everything is just slightly more clear and fascinating, and it's really just like more of a presence. But that's kind of off topic in my opinion. But the second thing it really transformed for me is just my view on reality. Like obviously I got this sense of interconnectedness, but this is also for the first time where I realized like how much our thoughts create reality and how much our speech creates reality. Because I remember after one of my well, there's gonna be two stories with this. After one of my trips, I was with a friend and we went walking in the city, and it was like we were still tripping a little bit, and I just remember looking around at everything and being like, whoa. Revelation. No, everything around me, all these buildings, not only all these buildings, all the thoughts and beliefs of the people around me, and, you know, the rules they adhere to, the laws they adhere to, they all began with a thought at some point in someone's mind, in one of our minds, like a human's mind. It all began with a thought. Like everything began with a thought, like from this concrete sidewalk that I'm walking on to, you know, I don't even know what else, to the building in front of me, to the laws that now that people have to walk on the sidewalks and cars, drive in the street. Like, what if it were the opposite? Not like that, but what if people walked in the middle and cars drove on the side? It wouldn't make much sense. But it was this realization and also empowerment, because it was like, okay, what makes those people who had those thoughts that collectively created reality, or at least the reality we experience, what makes those people different than me? So that was the first time I was like, whoa, I could make any dent in this world that I wanted, like that I want. Like I could really choose to do anything and get people behind my thoughts and make a dent in the world. And there's a quote, I think it was Steve Jobs that said, like, all I want to do is make a ding in the universe or whatever. And I don't know his history, but I'm pretty sure it had something to do with LSD. But so that was pretty big. And on the topic of like your thoughts like manifesting in reality, shrooms kind of like show you that a little bit, because there was an experience where I was with some friends, and they were good friends, good people, and there was one of them though who we always made the joke, like, he has a God complex, like he always has to be right, always, like that's just his thing. Like he will not quit arguing until you see his perspective or give up. Right? Like, we literally viewed him as having a God complex, and we were tripping, and this dude literally looked like a Greek god. Like, he was golden, like radiating, and and it took me a while to realize it was because that's what we perceived him as, or that's what we perceived him thinking himself as, that's how he showed to us physically. And that was another thing that's like, whoa, okay, not only do our thoughts create the physical reality, but our thoughts are what we see is just an image that is a thought in our brain, if that makes sense. So like, I could look at this water bottle and see something totally different than someone else who has had totally different experiences and thinks differently about water bottles, right? I would literally see this water bottle different because I have different thoughts about it. I hope that makes sense. If not, anyway. So, and then the last thing with just with creating reality with thoughts is like affirmations while tripping really helped me a lot, because first of all, there was one trip that was actually it had a bad experience in it, and I'll get to that at the end in the negatives. And after that bad experience, it was just a bad trip straight up. Until I was like, okay, my beliefs create reality. I'm just gonna I was in a hammock trying to go to sleep, and I was like, I'm gonna repeat affirmations to myself over and over. So I repeated all these affirmations to myself, like, I am this, I am loving, I am loved, I am blah blah blah, all these positive affirmations, and it quite literally did change the trip to something better, because I don't know, I'm more tapped into my subconscious mind when I'm tripping. At least that's my theory. And the other thing is, I have like experimented with listening to like deep sleep affirmation videos. There's tons on YouTube while on shrooms, and I only did this once, and it quite literally just changed my beliefs since then. Like, my beliefs have not been the same. So that is powerful. Now, obviously, you want to use that with caution, because I think there's a Paul Stamets. He's the guy who I don't know. He's big into mushrooms of all types. He's in Fantastic Fungi on Netflix or whatever. He talks about how he cured his stuttering with shrooms, because he fundamentally he believed he could stop stuttering now. Like, that's what he would repeat to himself: stop stuttering now, stop stuttering now. And he cured it. And it's like, I don't know, shrooms just opened my mind to like how what we believe literally influences how we experience reality, right? So a lot of these are are big concepts, and I'm trying to condense them as well as I can, because obviously language can't really grasp all of this fully. And speaking of language, that is another thing it fundamentally shifted for me, is my view on language. Because if our thoughts create reality, then our words definitely create it more. And when I'm saying create, I was just think of it more as like our experience of reality is heavily influenced by the thoughts we think and the words we speak, right? And especially the words we speak, because now those thoughts aren't just in our brain, they're out in the air. And so if I could just an example is like, well, I'm not even going to think of an example, but if someone hears your words versus you just not speaking those thoughts out loud, those are two different realities that could happen, right? Those are two different existences. But the other thing with language was that I really I got a sense of how limited it is, like how truly limited, because as I was sitting there trying to explain my experience, I just couldn't. It was impossible to explain what I was going through right there. And it really is quite impossible to explain the experience. And since then, it's just been my view of language is it's so limited to like how we can transform one view of one experience to another person, like how we can communicate that. It's just, my view of that has changed a lot. And since then, I guess I've been a lot more in touch with like emotions and paying attention to people's emotions, and not only that, but also body language, because so much is communicated with body language. So the last thing I'm going to talk about, second last thing before I get into the negatives, is how it shifted my view of time. And I can't really talk about this without talking forever. So I just want to say one thing you experience with psychedelics is, or sometimes at least, is time loops. So it feels like you're experiencing the same thing over and over again. And there was, on that same trip where where we saw, my friend is like a Greek god, right? He was literally glowing. His hair was like flowing. It was weird. On that same exact trip, we had a speaker playing with music, which, by the way, if you're tripping, music will like not control it, but it will guide the trip. So you want to have good music, right? You can have energetic music and you'll have a more energetic trip, but it quite literally guides it. So we had music playing at the speaker on the table. And every like new song that played, it was just a new, like, past and future didn't exist. It was the same thing again, just a different song, but we couldn't remember what the last song was. It was just now. And not only that, we had the same conversations that we just had. We were like, this is deja vu. Like, we just had this. We just had this. And that's why, like, something I haven't done and I had wanted to do is, like, literally start a voice recording on my phone and record the whole thing to see if, like, we were actually having the same conversations or if it was just, like, our experience of the now. We couldn't think of the past and the future as much. So my perception of time has been a lot different since then. And it hasn't just been shrooms that affected this, but it kind of opened my eyes to the fact that time really is kind of just made up by us. It's how we describe our shifting through experiences, our shifting through growth. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about that, except since then I've been more focused on trying to be present in the now and not worry about the future so much, because that's what causes anxiety. Not worry about the past so much, because a lot of times that makes you depressive, because you're focused on how, how bad you've been, how sad you've always been, how life never works out for you. So it's like, since then I just realized that nothing truly exists except now. Like, the past and the future only exist in our minds, in our thoughts. We just have ideas about what the past has been, which some of those ideas are quite literally false. And we have ideas of what the future will be, which we have no way of knowing, right? So that's how it's shifted my view of time. And I don't know if this is helpful for anybody. I'm just sharing my experiences. I guess I could share some practical tips. I think that would be helpful. So if you're going to undergo, a mushroom trip, first of all, it's not a party drug. It's an introspection drug. You're literally figuring out what's in your mind, and not only what's in your mind, what's in the minds around you. Because this is gonna sound crazy, but the people I've tripped with, our minds are more connected since then. Like, if you've ever had like telepathic experiences where you just know what each other are thinking, you don't have to converse to make a decision. You're just like on the same page, right? Those amplified with the people I've tripped with since then. So some practical tips is just be with good people and view it as like don't view it as something light. Like, this is your mind that you're going into. So view it as like trying to figure yourself out. And you can go into it with a lot of intention, right? Because with a lot of different intentions, you can go out in nature and be like, I'm just going to revel in the beauty of nature. Or you could be like, okay, I'm going to dive into my core beliefs and what's holding me back. Like, I'm going to go lay with an eye mask and dive into my childhood memories, which is scary, but it's so transformative, right? So, be with good people who uplift you in a good setting. Prepare. Don't do them on an empty stomach. It will make the trip much more intense, but I would say it's not smart just because of the experiences I've had, and I'll get to that in a second. It's a negative, one of those negative things, but have water by you, be comfortable. Don't set it up so that you have to go do something to make yourself feel comfortable, because you'll have the urge to go do things. So another practical tip is, as far as getting them, I always just recommend grow them yourself. If you're in a legal state, of course, just grow them yourself. It's really not that hard to learn. And there's tons of kits online, right? And that way you're just, like, it's hard to, like, you can't exactly, at least as I know of, like, synthesized shrooms. You can't buy, like, bad contaminated shrooms. You can buy, like, badly dehydrated shrooms, and they might be slightly rotting by the time you get them, but I just recommend growing them. It's also fun, in my opinion, but as far as everything else goes, just don't fight it, because you'll have the urge to, but it's better off if once you've taken them, you just kind of let go. You just kind of let go and let them show you, and I say them as the shrooms, let them show you what you need to see, because they will if you don't fight it, and you will have a much better experience if you just are able to let go and breathe. So now I'm going to get into some of the negative side effects. So, and I'm going to say negative because really I choose to see everything as a positive, as a lesson I've learned, right? So the biggest thing is with my speech. Because of my increased knowledge, I guess, of like how language shapes things, it's like my mind is constantly searching for the most precise word to speak what I want to speak. But then at the same time, I recognize that to a certain extent, it's like useless, and not useless, but to a certain extent, it falls short. And I think that has literally affected the way I speak, and just more pauses. And I don't know, I talked with a buddy about this, and I was like, have you like spoken differently since then? And he's like, yeah, definitely, because it just makes you think about language so much differently. So I choose to see that as a positive, because it's like at some point, yes, maybe I'm being more intentional with my speech, but also I just need to get to the point where I can slow down. That's my biggest issue. Sometimes I just talk, right? And I've always been, that is something that hasn't changed. I've always been this like ADHD kid, right? And okay, so the second, that's the biggest thing, is it's just changed my view on language and how I literally speak. And the second thing is, it's like a negative experience I had that was like, it was very scary, but it served its purpose, right? It showed me like, this is no joke. Like, you have to be responsible when you're taking these substances, because a lot of stuff can happen. So, and I'm not going to tell you this story to scare anyone. Don't be scared going into a trip, because then you're going to have a scary trip, right? But there was one trip last summer. So I went up to a cabin with a friend and a bunch of his friends, which I didn't know them at all, but I had taken enough shrooms at that point to be like, okay, well, I know that I can control whether their vibes, their thoughts, their speech affects my experience. Like, I have some measure of control over that now because I can change my internal beliefs of what I'm experiencing. And he did it on an empty stomach because he did not want to, this is my friend, good friend. Like, we were football buddies back in the day. We went through high school together, and he was one of my closest friends at the time. He did 3.5 grams on an empty stomach because the shrooms upset his stomach every time. And that is pretty common. Like, they're not so easy to digest. So he was like, I'm going to do them on an empty stomach because then I can take less, because when you do it on an empty stomach, it's stronger. He wanted to have a powerful trip, like very big trip, but he just wanted to not experience, the stomach issues. So he did it on an empty stomach, and which is something he's not used to, right? This dude definitely eats a lot. He was a gym guy. So also, the other thing is, the other factor in this was that he smoked a ton of weed. And that was, I always recommend, like, just keeping them separate. Now, there's, just because of this experience mainly. But he smoked a lot of weed. And he was walking off the pier. We were at a lake house, back towards the house. And he, like, falls off the side into, like, not a big fall, just onto this little beach area, right? And we were kind of like at the pier, and we were so dumb. We were kind of laughing. We were like, oh, that's the second time someone tripped while tripping. Because earlier someone tripped over a chair or something. So we went to go, like, help him up or whatever, and he got up and then, like, collapsed again and down to the ground. And we were like, oh shit, did he hit his head or something? Because there were some rocks nearby. So we were like, okay, we need to, like, figure this out now. So we helped him, and we're like, you need water, because he came back again. And we were like, you need water, you need some food, let's get you in the house, blah, blah, blah. So we started walking him back, and just back on the ground. And this time, he didn't come back right away. And we were scared shitless. And I was scared shitless, because the shrooms he were on were the ones that I had grown. I hope this is okay to share on the internet. But anyway, he, like, started, it was to the point where we're like, we should call the police, like, we should call the cops, like, we should get him some help right now. And then he started turning blue, and we were like, call the cops now. And I get this is very scary sounding, and I don't want to scare anyone away. It's just to show that you do have to be responsible with these, right? Because the other thing is, everyone was tripping. There were no sober people there. And it's important to have some sober people who can think clearly, right? So we called the cops, and we're like, my friend just tripped. I think he hit his head or something, but he's been fainting, and he won't, like, get up and whatever. And while this other dude was on the phone with the cops, he was like, we need an ambulance, blah, blah, blah. My buddy on the ground just, like, sits up, totally color back in his face, whatever. And he had no idea what happened. We were like, dude, are you good? And my friend just hangs up on the cops. But eventually he called them back and be like, yo, he just woke up. Like, we think he's fine. He must have just fainted. So that all ended up well. But we were like, what happened? And I guess he had some sort of out-of-body experience, and it scared the shit out of us, right? So I share that story because, like I've said many times, it is important to be responsible. And that is when I viewed things more responsibly, because it's like, wow, that could have so easily been my best friend dying right there. Because maybe I didn't do my research enough, or maybe I didn't, you know, think about this well enough. So this is a long video. I just wanted to share my experience. Ultimately, it changed my life a lot for the better, definitely, because I just view things in a much bigger way now, much larger perspective of just the connectedness between everything and my little spot in the universe, right? My little place, this little life that I have, and it's taught me to not take life so seriously. Not everything has to be so serious. Like, obviously, you want to take things seriously, but that's your choice, what you want to take seriously. So, I hope maybe this helped somebody who is thinking about trying these for the first time. If you're doing it for the first time, I definitely recommend like having someone experienced that you trust with you. If not, I recommend just not doing like more than a gram and being by yourself in a very comfortable place, in a very content mindset. And yeah, again, disclaimer, I'm not condoning. I just believe that these plants, psychedelics in general, have a lot of potential to heal a lot of depression, anxiety, stuttering in this world. And I think the one thing that's gonna make that happen is education and, you know, authentic experience and understanding of what they can do for you. So, all right, that's this video. You are me, and we are infinite. Peace.